There are many schools of thought on close miking speaker cabinets. Here's how I like to mic an electric guitar cabinet. You're going to see a lot of these Marshall speaker cabinets. In fact, you may even own one. This particular cabinet has 4 12-inch speakers. Now, standing out in front of the cabinet, you're probably saying to yourself, this cabinet sounds great. What's so hard about miking it? Well, it's not about being hard, it's all about getting the best sound out to the PA. The next time you go to see a big name rock band with a row of amps behind them, look to see if they have a mic placed in front of any one of them. Do you think they just arbitrarily placed the mic in front of just any speaker cabinet they picked? No way! Remember I said that dynamic microphones lent themselves to better close miking applications because they can stand higher sound pressure levels than condenser mics? Well, the Shure model SM57 is probably the most widely used dynamic microphone in the world and has been since the late 1960s. It's that good of a design and it's really inexpensive. It's generally my choice for guitar cabinets. Although all combined, the speaker cabinet may sound great, I guarantee you that each of the speakers themselves sound a little bit different from each other. Especially if you have an older cabinet where one or all of the speakers have been repaired or replaced. We're only going to mic one of these speakers, so that individual speaker's sound is the one that will be projected through the PA system. You need to experiment to determine which speaker has the sound that, on its own, you like the best. I like to place the mic about 1 inch off from the center of the individual speaker cone and about 1 inch away from the grill cloth. Make sure the mic is not touching the grill cloth because it'll vibrate and make noise in the mic. You can experiment with different mic placements to see what works best for you. Like I said, there are many schools of thought. Some people like to place it dead center in the middle of the speaker cone. You can also experiment with slightly different angles. If you're recording amplified acoustic instruments, you could place a condenser mic farther away from the speaker cabinet, but you need to be real careful about any high sound pressure levels damaging it. Now let's look at an option for bass players. Bass tones are generally non-directional. In other words, it doesn't usually matter which direction a bass cabinet is pointing as long as it's out where the sound pressure level can emanate throughout the room. That's why in, let's say, surround sound home theater systems, the subwoofer can be almost anywhere in the room. Bass amps deliver a pretty limited frequency range, and because of this are harder to mic. Specialized mics like those used for kick drums are needed to withstand the punishment they dish out. You could use a regular dynamic mic like an SM57, but its best performance lies in a little higher frequencies. A popular alternative is to use a direct box for the bass. A direct box, or what's sometimes referred to as a DI, takes the place of a microphone and provides the proper interface between the bass amp and the mixer. Many DIs have controls that allow the adjustment of the bass sound. You could EQ it at the mixer or use an insert to get the bass signal to an external effects processor if you have one. Miking drums is another area that I've actually seen guys get into fights about. There are so many techniques. Obviously, you could individually mic every drum. There are drum mic kits made by many companies that include as many mics as you need. Many of these mics are actually manufactured with a clip on them that allows attachment to the individual drum without needing to have a dozen mic stands around the drum set. You know drummers, they love their hardware. I personally think that the smartest guy in any band is the piccolo player. He never has to carry anything that won't fit in his shirt pocket. But drummers aren't like that. This huge drum set is heavily mic'd. As we look around the set, we see that both the kicks are mic'd. Then all the high toms are mic'd. The hi-hat is mic'd. Then there's the snare. Then the floor tom-tom. And then there are 2 mics on booms to pick up everything they missed. I'm betting most of you don't need to do this. For most smaller venues, let's consider a much simpler method of miking drums with less gear and hassle. In fact, we're only going to need mics for the kick drum or kick drums, the snare, the hi-hat, and 2 overhead condenser mics. The drum's overall personality, if you will, are dictated by the kick, the snare, and the hi-hat. We like to mic these separately because it allows us to shape their sound, and we'll talk about doing that in a few minutes. 2 overhead narrow diaphragm condenser mics will provide coverage for the remainder of the kit, and the cymbals will sound great. We can EQ them just to make the right amount of sizzle. The drum set overhead mics need to be sufficiently high enough to avoid being struck by the drummer. In the diagram from the front view, you'll notice that the mics are actually angled a little downwards so that the paths of both mics cross each other. From the top view, we can see that the mics are positioned above and behind the drummer and pointing a little towards the front. You do want to make sure that they don't point towards the floor monitors or you're liable to have a feedback problem with them.